Welcome, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us. We are very happy to welcome you to the 5th Local and Regional Governments Forum within the framework of the High Level Political Forum, already the 5th one, and also one that we start virtually, but we very much look forward to continuing the sessions next week in person in New York. I would like to welcome you on behalf of UN Habitat, UNDESA, UNDP, Local 2030, and the Global Task Force. Of course, United Cities and Local Governments is very pleased to facilitate the Global Task Force in this endeavor. We are going to be discussing today how we can foster the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals from the local level towards the 2030 SDG Summit. And we are very pleased that we continue to have localization at the heart of the high-level political forum. We had a representative of our constituency yesterday from the city of Konya in the localization session, and we are thrilled now to have other voices joining these discussions. It is a great pleasure for us as constituency of local and regional governments to continue promoting the engagement of communities, but also of our sphere of government in the global goals. We feel that there is a very strong role to play from the provision of basic services at local level for the achievement of the SDGs, and hopefully our ideas around us, around this very topic and how we can enhance and accelerate implementation will be highlighted in the session that we start today, and in the Local and Regional Governments Day taking place on the 11th, and the in-person session of the forum taking place on the 12th of July. So with this quick introduction and thanking of all the partners that are here, I would like to start with one of the key partners. We are just coming out of the World Urban Forum 11 in Katowice, not without challenges, I would say, Executive Director, but with great success and pleasure. We have been able to enjoy each other, to see the ecosystem for sustainable cities coming together. Congratulations from our constituency to you, Executive Director, and thank you very much for joining us. Maimouna Mod Sharif, you don't need any introduction. Welcome again.
Thank you so much, Amelia. Thank you so much, colleagues, Excellencies, Honorable Mayors and representatives of local and regional government, colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. A very good morning and afternoon to you. Welcome to all of you to the 5th of the Local and Regional Governments Forum. I'm honored to open this important event together with my two friends and dynamic leaders, Mr. Achim Steiner, the Administrator of UNDP, and Mr. Barry Banovics, Mayor of Kitchener, and also UCLG Governing President. Let me extend my gratitude to the co-organizing partners that have worked with UN Habitat to plan and celebrate this event. The colleagues of UNDESA, the Global Task Force of Local and Regional Governments, the United Nations Development Programme, and the Local 2030 Coalition. The Local and Regional Governments Forum is a key moment for advocacy as well as policy discussion on the local implementation of the SDGs, and especially those being reviewed at the high-level political forum. It presents us with an opportunity to assess progress, identify challenges, and most importantly, discuss action and shape common solutions together, because action is what is needed now. Ladies and gentlemen, the future of humanity is undoubtedly urban, and the impact of all global crises is mostly felt locally and especially in urban setting. The COVID-19 pandemic has not gone away. In fact, it is now a full-blown social economic crisis. 119 to 124 million people were made poorer by the COVID-19 pandemic. Local and regional governments have lost an average 15% to 20% of revenues compared to 2020. As conflict rage across the world, and the world is witnessing the highest number of violent conflicts since 1945. 100 million people have now been forced to flee their homes. On the climate front, global emissions are set to increase by almost 14% over the current decade, a point of no return, which could lead to a climate catastrophe. Climate change will also determine the future of migration flows that we now have a critical impact on the capacities of local and regional government to deliver urban basic services. The pandemic further delayed global action to address the vital twin crises of climate change and loss of biodiversity. Excellencies, dear friends, how successful we are in addressing these challenges depend on the capacity of our local and regional governments to do so. We are only as strong as our local governments are empowered. On this front, there is hope. Over the past few years, we have built together an unprecedented momentum towards an inclusive multilateralism. SDG localization and the role of local and regional governments have been placed at the center of global agendas and processes. 3 milestones in 2022 alone illustrate the positive path we are on. First, in April, the high-level meeting on the review of the implementation of the new urban agenda was held in the UN General Assembly. As the President of the General Assembly, His Excellency Mr. Abdullah Shahid noted, the high-level meeting was one of the most well-attended mandated meetings of the General Assembly in recent years. Over 90 member states participated in person, renewing commitments to advance sustainable local and urban development, including the strengthening of multi-level governance system and engagement with local governments and other local actors. This is also reflected in the recently released UN General Assembly summary of the outcomes of the high-level meeting. Second, the revamped Local 2030 Coalition was launched last year, and the first meeting of its steering committee took place also in April. The Local 2030 Coalition is the UN-wide initiative on localizing the SDGs that UN Habitat has the honor to host and co-chair with UNDP. This is huge, a huge opportunity to transform the way the UN system engages with local actors to advance the delivery of the SDG. Third, we just closed last week, as Emilia mentioned, the 11th edition of the World Urban Forum in Katowice, with all the challenges local leaders gathered along with more than 17,000 people from 155 countries to discuss challenges and opportunities to transform our cities for a better urban future. The local and regional governments constituency had a pivotal role in this year's forum. The great success of the World Assembly of Local and Regional Governments and the Roundtable of the local and regional governments were just two of the many events in which the constituency advanced the discussion on urbanization and localization. Moreover, local and regional governments have a prominent presence in Katowice declared actions that call for a renewal of the multilateral system that responds to the challenges and opportunities of the urban era. This system must include the present and the local regional government in decision-making arenas as leaders and representatives of local and global interests. Excellencies, these three major events highlighted the centrality of localization of the 2030 agenda and the new urban agenda, voluntary local review of VLR and voluntary subnational review of VSR are emerging as important instruments in this process of localization. Over the past 2 years, the total number of VLRs worldwide had tripled from approximately 40 VLR in June 2020 to more than 130 in June 2022. VSRs which are report developed by local government association of specific countries, have also gained traction. In 2022, local government association from 11 countries of the 45 reporting to the high-level political forum have committed to prepare VSR. But the VLR and VSR story goes beyond numbers. Their value lays in their capacity to catalyze and accelerate actions towards the SDG. VLRs help local authorities to identify where cities stand towards the implementation of the global goals and where bottlenecks lie. They thus help orient strategic planning and identify priority action as well as catalytic investment. As national government increasingly recognize the value of local monitoring for SDG implementation, a growing number of reporting countries are linking VLRs to their VNR, recognizing the value added of the subnational data in improving the analysis and the report of VNR. Local governments have been consulted and included in VNR processes to varying degree in Andorra, Argentina, Philippines, Switzerland, and Pakistan. Countries like Italy, Finland, and Malaysia have demonstrated that the engagement of local governments in these processes strengthens multi-level governance and helps to ensure policy coherence. Dear colleagues, the coming 2 years will be decisive in the advancement of the SDG. First, the high-level political forum in 2023 will convene at the level of head of state and government under the auspices of the General Assembly meeting, also known as SDG Summit. SDG 11 will be among the global goals reviewed at the high-level political forum, and 2023 is also the year of UN Habitat Assembly, where we will bring the voices and priorities of local and regional government to our member states and at the center of the renewed mandate of UN Habitat. Furthermore, the General Assembly will also host the Summit of the Future. These events taken together will be very critical moment to review and accelerate progress toward the 17th goal. So ladies and gentlemen, to achieve the 2030 agenda, the pace of implementation must speed up. Localization has never been so central, so vital to our effort and our future. We are in the decade of action. We must act now if we are to mitigate the impact of the key challenges of our times. You can count on the support of UN Habitat to work hand in hand with local and regional governments worldwide. Thank you, Amelia and colleagues. I wish you all a fruitful discussion during this forum. Over to you, Amelia. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Executive Director, for portraying the road ahead of us, also for recalling the important steps and milestones that we have undergone already. Very important reflections indeed, and we are convinced that localization will gain more and more traction, and I am sure that the message from our governing president will address that. But before we get to that, I would like to invite you all to listen to the message that Achim Steiner, the UNDP administrator, has recorded for us. Colleagues, whenever you are ready.
Honorable Mayors, Executive Director of UN Habitat, my dear friend and colleague Maimouna Mohammed Sharif, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege to join this 5th edition of the Local and Regional Governments Forum. It is the primary means for cities and territories across the world to report on SDG action at the high-level political forum. And it comes at a moment of profound global challenges. The COVID-19 pandemic is still with us, placing immense strain on local and regional governments. The cost of living is now soaring as we face a global food, energy and finance crisis stemming in part from the tragic war in Ukraine. The United Nations is working with our partners to rebuild homes and cities in Ukraine while supporting local governments in their efforts to sustain critical public services for conflict-affected communities. This is true also of municipalities in Ukraine's neighboring countries. And cities across the globe must find a way to provide for both displaced persons and host communities in times of crisis. Throughout these challenges, local and regional governments, which are the primary interface between the citizens and the state, are responding to the needs of communities. That includes everything from improving infrastructure for healthcare and sanitation to providing access to affordable clean energy and housing, to advancing gender equality, driving action across the SDGs. In the wake of COVID-19, cities have also been an epicenter of innovation. The response to the pandemic has often created better mobility, safety, and air quality through measures like new bike lanes and better public spaces. The United Nations Development Programme's City-to-City network is pinpointing such solutions. For example, that includes turning neglected urban spaces into parks in Nepal. Or consider Guatemala City, where UNDP is supporting a new approach to the management of city infrastructure like parks and lighting. The city is standardizing materials and designs to reduce costs and labor and increase the speed and quality of repairs and maintenance. Crucially, everything is driven by the needs of communities. Cities are also leading climate and environmental action. Consider the Urban Shift Initiative, led by the UN Environment Programme and the Global Environment Facility, which is working with cities to promote nature-based solutions and low-carbon public transport. Or look to Lebanon, where a UNDP World Bank project is helping to mitigate the environmental and health impacts of the Port of Beirut explosion while greening the city's reconstruction. Indeed, cities are leading efforts to build forward better from COVID-19. For example, UNDP is also teaming up with major e-commerce platforms in countries such as Uganda to transform the delivery of goods and services. That includes connecting farmers to urban markets for the first time. UNDP is also helping cities to mobilize new sources of finance to drive forward the SDGs at the local level, helping to ensure that no one is left behind. That includes investing in green infrastructure, cutting-edge urban farming models, or new technology that can forge better connections between communities. Cities and local governments are increasingly making use of the SDG effect. They are using the SDGs not only as tools to design, implement, and measure more inclusive policies, they're also communicating local action and engaging communities on the SDGs. As part of these efforts, they are working with the UN SDG Action Campaign, which we are proud to host at UNDP. The initiative is inviting cities and regions to flip the script, setting the world on a new path towards bolder action on climate change, peace, and justice. That means turning apathy into action, fear into hope, and divisiveness into togetherness. Honorable Mayors, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, as we seek to maintain the momentum generated by the World Urban Forum, sustainable urban development is becoming ever more relevant on the world stage. That is demonstrated also by the G7, which recently highlighted the role of cities as places of diversity and identity, exchange and integration, creativity and solidarity. Yet, implementing the complex efforts required to reach the SDGs is much more difficult than deploying smart technology or installing the latest app. Cities must become true platforms for inclusive, future-proof development. To get there, UNDP, UN Habitat, and the entire United Nations family will continue to provide tailored support to local and regional governments to advance the SDGs. The health and well-being of billions of people who calls the world's cities home and our planet depends on it. And I also want to thank my dear colleague Maimouna for the excellent partnership that we have developed over the years with UN Habitat. Together, we are working in many cities of the world to deliver on our promise. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to the UNDP administrator for this important message highlighting the role that local and regional government service provision is playing, for highlighting the partnerships that we have been able to establish, and for recalling that this is an all of government, all of society effort that we need to tackle. Certainly our constituency is ready to contribute to the challenge, and many of our members are already flipping the script and telling their stories through our partnership with the campaign. And now I would like to give the floor to the Mayor of Kitchener and Governing President of United Cities and Local Governments. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Emilia, and thank you for your incredible leadership of our World Organization. Excellencies, UNDP Administrator, Mr. Steiner, UN Habitat Executive Director and friend of cities and regional governments, Maimouna Sharif, dear mayors and representatives of the Global Task Force, dear friends. Today, I'm joining you here from the city of Kitchener, Canada, the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. As citizens in Canada, we recognize our responsibility to serve as stewards for the land that we occupy and honor the original caretakers who came before us. And so our community is enriched by the enduring knowledge and deep-rooted traditions of the diverse First Nations, Métis, and Inuit in Kitchener today. It is indeed a pleasure for me to welcome all of you to this 5th Local and Regional Government Forum in the framework of the High-Level Political Forum. Let me especially thank the co-organizers of the forum, UN Habitat Executive Director and Deputy Secretary General Maimouna Sharif, as well as His Excellency Colin Vixen Kelapile, President of ECOSOC and Undersecretary General of UNDESA, Liu Zhenmin, as well as Administrator Steiner, and of course, the entire Local 2030 platform. Your participants, local and regional governments all around the globe have been managing so many crises in recent years, from the COVID-19 pandemic to the climate change crisis, and from the current economic crisis to conflicts in places like Ukraine and other areas of our planet. The interconnected crises that we face call on all of us to act together, unified in a shared vision for our collective future. In spite of the challenges we face, I'm happy to welcome all of you today in a virtual manner, as the forum is a critical moment to ensure our voices are heard, and I'm looking forward to seeing many of you in New York next week, hosting this forum physically again, 3 years since we last met. In April in New York, we reinstated our commitment as a constituency to achieving the new urban agenda. At the World Urban Forum 11 in Katowice, our constituency came together in 2 pivotal moments to take stock of where we are in the implementation of the new urban agenda and to rally all stakeholders. We have advocated in every possible platform and every international event for our role as partners for transformation and for involving local and regional governments in the conversation beyond competences and powers, and to consider the co-creation of our future. 1 year removed from the review of the 2030 agenda, we need to ask ourselves what we bring to this HLPF and how can we strengthen our position globally to be back on track as we head towards the SDG Summit and the midterm review of the goals. We have seen over the past years the impact of the pandemic in health. We have seen losses in regards to gender equality. We are seeing that women, children, persons with disability, and those living in informality have been the hardest hit through these challenging times. We will need to redefine what is essential by building a framework for equality and inclusion, a framework of co-creation, collaboration between stakeholders, one that includes everyone in decision-making processes. We need a true recovery that provides equal access to quality education for all, employment opportunities for youth and people with disabilities, professional and vocational training and upskilling on soft and digital skills, benefits and protections for informal workers and contract-based workers. We truly need to build a future where no one is left behind. It is also time to transform our relationship with our ecosystems, transforming all of our models to develop caring systems, to protect environmental rights, and to harness the potential of local and regional governments in developing a vision for better life on land and below water, considering the role of regions, small towns, and intermediary cities in transforming how we produce and how we consume. Excellencies, dear friends, our constituency of local and regional governments is committed through actions to achieve the global goals, to harness local and subnational reporting as a political tool for transformation. This is exemplified in the number of voluntary local reviews, which has tripled in just 2 years, reaching 150 in June 2022. As we speak, voluntary subnational reviews have emerged in 14 countries and in total represent over 1.2 billion people. These tools already work to engage us in dialogue with national governments, in increasing awareness about how our day-to-day work is already about localizing the global goals. Dialogues like one I hosted earlier this week. On Tuesday, for example, in my own country, Canada, I welcomed and met here in Kitchener with Minister Karina Gold, the Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, who's responsible for the SDG agenda here in Canada. And we discussed the work of cities like Kitchener, as well as the work of UCLG globally and our national association, the Federation of Canadian Municipalities nationally, on localizing the SDGs. But we need more. We need more commitment in developing VLRs and VSRs, but we also need a system that fully engages local and regional governments in the VNR processes and an enabling institutional environment that supports this to create more opportunities for the goals. In these times of complexity, it's essential to count on the importance of city diplomacy as transformative diplomacy, to build upon the display of care from local and regional governments to ensure we deliver a world in which future generations can thrive. The time has come to develop this enabling environment for basic services as the cornerstone of the life and prosperity of our communities. We're only 8 years away from 2030. Ahead of the high-level summit in 2023, our commitment towards the localization of the Universal Development Agendas remains as strong as it was when they were first adopted in 2015 and 2016. This is why we're calling on the HLPF to strengthen the structural involvement of all stakeholders and to face these next 8 years with everyone working together and being on board to act for a better future. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mayor, for putting through the commitments of the constituency that are also reflected in the statement that we are going to present next week in New York at the United Nations, also reflected in our annual report on localization that will be presented there next week, but also for putting through our hopes for how the high-level political forum should be looking like in the future to allow us to work better. I am sure that many partners of the Global Task Force gathered here from Oru Fogar to Regions 4, our colleagues of CLGF and many others will certainly agree with this. Thank you for this opening ceremony. Thank you, Executive Director, for being with us. Allow us now to go to the second part of this gathering that is going to be facilitated by Mr. Amsom Sibanda, the Chief National Strategy and Capacity Building Branch of UNDESA, and that is going to be focusing on the voluntary local reviews and the voluntary subnational reviews, which have become key tools for innovation, but also for engagement of our constituency and our communities to the global goals. Amsom, welcome, and the floor is yours. Good luck with the moderation. We cannot hear you. Can you see if you can unmute? Let us try now, answer. No, we are not hearing you yet. No, still not working. Let us see now.
I think it should be okay now.
Yes, it is working. In your hands, dear friend. Thank you.
Thank you. I had to switch to my phone. Hopefully everything will be okay. Thank you, Emilia, for facilitating a very engaging opening session. Colleagues, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome. I'm Emson Sibanda, and I'm with UNDESA, and
we lost you again.
all right, I'm back now.
You are. And you might need to put off the sound of your computer so that we don't have the return from your phone. Let us try that. Not working.
All right, what about now? But I can still hear an echo.
Yes, we can. But let us carry on, my friend, because at least we can hear your voice. So let us go ahead.
Thank you, thank you. I would like to welcome you to this session on voluntary local reviews and voluntary subnational reviews, key policy tools for the SDGs. With 8 years to go to 2030, local and regional governments are engaging in ever-growing numbers in carrying out subnational reviews, known as voluntary local reviews, and voluntary subnational reviews of implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals at the local level. We have heard this morning from Ms. Maimouna Mohd Sharif that the total number of voluntary local reviews and voluntary subnational reviews is doubled over the period 2020 to 2021. This is wonderful news, but we need more action if we are to accelerate and foster SDG localization. To learn more about what has been happening around the world, this session will share insights about how the preparation of local reviews and subnational reviews has contributed to inclusion of the SDGs in local development plans and budgeting. We will also hear how positive examples are showing how local reviews and subnational review processes have, among other things, fostered participatory approaches to SDG implementation and to leaving no one behind, contributing to data collection that is relevant to the SDGs at the local level, and contributing to the formation of new partnerships to support SDG achievement. To help us address these issues, we have an accomplished list of speakers who are joining us virtually. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to deliver a statement considering these important issues. And with those few remarks, let me invite our first speaker, Carolina Cross, who is the mayor of Montevideo. Mayor Carolina, you have 3 minutes.
Muchísimas gracias. Para nosotros es un placer poder participar en una nueva edición del Foro de Gobiernos Locales y Regionales sobre la Agenda 2030. Vaya, un gran abrazo para Emilia, Maimouna y Berry. Este panel de revisiones locales voluntarias con colegas de otras ciudades y regiones que, como Montevideo, mi ciudad, han asumido el compromiso con los ODS y con la Agenda 2030, ¿verdad? El desarrollo urbano, inclusivo y equitativo, y también colegas que han asumido el desafío de generar acciones orientadas al cambio climático. Según cifras de SGLU, a junio de 2022 se han elaborado 100 informes locales voluntarios a nivel global, de los que algo más del 30% corresponden a ciudades y gobiernos locales de América Latina. En nuestro modelo de trabajo pensamos las políticas desde y hacia el desarrollo sostenible, porque esto sitúa verdaderamente a las personas en el centro. Primero, se sustenta en la convivencia, en la cultura y en la paz. Segundo, tiene un enfoque de derechos humanos y de derecho a la ciudad. Tercero, valora, incorpora y promueve la innovación. Y cuarto, ubica la participación de la ciudadanía y de la sociedad civil organizada como un elemento central para el diseño y la implementación de toda la planificación estratégica local. A pesar de los retos que nos ha planteado la pandemia, como todas las ciudades del mundo, hemos hecho un enorme esfuerzo y en el caso de Montevideo hemos avanzado con resiliencia hacia la recuperación y nuestro plan de respuesta, el Plan de Apoyo Básico a la Ciudadanía, Plan ABC, ha tenido un impacto directo en varios ODS y sitúa los derechos humanos en el centro de la recuperación buscando respuestas que sean seguras, equitativas y ecológicas. Nuestro plan ABC está alineado con los ODS, demostrando cómo el trabajo de los gobiernos locales y regionales contribuye a reducir la desigualdad. Tiene los ejes de trabajo, alimentación, salud, igualdad de género y territorio. Por otro lado, nuestro informe local voluntario 2022 contiene no solo los compromisos y desafíos en la implementación de la Agenda 2030 de Montevideo en los ODS sujetos a revisión, sino que también presenta cómo se adaptó la gestión de gobierno y las políticas públicas a los nuevos desafíos presentados por la pandemia y va a estar listo en el mes de septiembre, en cuyo caso lo compartiremos en el marco de las actividades de la Asamblea General de las Naciones Unidas. Nosotros creemos que las revisiones locales voluntarias son una herramienta fundamental para acelerar el desarrollo sostenible a nivel global y las diversas agendas locales. El proceso que está detrás de la elaboración de esta revisión local a nosotros nos ha permitido alinear la Agenda 2030 con nuestros instrumentos de planificación de Montevideo, identificar cómo las políticas o planes de gobierno de Montevideo contribuyen a los ODS, identificar sinergias posibles y alianzas con otros grupos de actores y partes interesadas. Uno de los ejemplos es esta reunión tan importante. Poner al futuro en el centro de la conversación y planear de manera prospectiva. Nos ha permitido también identificar y construir datos a nivel subnacional. Tenemos una fuerte política de datos abiertos y la vamos a continuar. Y esto nos fortalece en la toma de decisiones basada en la evidencia, pero también fortalece el diálogo con la ciudadanía, poniendo elementos de más alto nivel para el diálogo político y participativo. Y así fomentar la participación ciudadana con nuevas herramientas y con todos los actores que tengan interés en la construcción de una ciudad sostenible. A pesar de los avances, tenemos desafíos que tenemos que enfrentar. Pensamos que tenemos que avanzar hacia un sistema de indicadores y una línea de base adecuada para evaluar efectivamente el avance en el cumplimiento de las metas de cada ODS. Acercar la Agenda 2030 a las y los habitantes de la ciudad, porque con frecuencia la agenda se percibe por las comunidades y actores a nivel subnacional como un marco global lejano, alejado del contexto local y un tema que compete solamente a los gobiernos. Finalmente, creemos que para que los gobiernos locales podamos continuar participando en esta transformación, para transformar la realidad, debemos fortalecer las finanzas locales y acompañar con un mayor desarrollo de capacidades. Lograr los 17 objetivos y las 169 metas requiere emplear estrategias innovadoras, pero sobre todo un alto grado de cooperación y de socialización de experiencias, de recursos, de tecnologías, de información entre todos los actores claves en los diversos niveles de actuación. Nosotros, para continuar avanzando en la localización de la Agenda 2030, tenemos un desafío y una oportunidad. Tenemos que preservar los logros de Montevideo y a su vez tenemos que acelerar los esfuerzos para conquistar las metas pendientes, ratificando la validez de los ODS como referencia para nuestra planificación institucional y con una especial atención al esfuerzo adicional requerido para acelerar la recuperación de los efectos de la pandemia. Sin duda, esto implica para nosotros incorporar el enfoque del derecho a la ciudad, que conecta los derechos humanos y permite la mejor implementación de la Agenda 2030 y la nueva agenda urbana en nuestros territorios. Más que nunca, hoy Montevideo se compromete a trabajar sin pausa, resolviendo el presente, construyendo el futuro, siempre cerca de nuestra gente para transformar realidades y, estando más cerca, llegar más lejos. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Mayor Carolina Cos, for a very interesting presentation. I think you underscored a very important point, which is that sometimes the 2030 agenda as a global framework is seen as being very far away from the lives of the local citizens. I think yesterday during one of the sessions, there was a survey which was done, which again underscored that very important point. So we need definitely to do more effort to make sure that the local citizens can identify and relate to the 2030 agenda. And of course, the issues of social cohesion, participation of citizens are critical in finding a way to recover from the COVID-19 pandemic. Again, thanks a lot for your remarks. Our next presenter is Mr. Rashid El Abdi, who is the president of the Regional Council of Rabat Sel Kenitra from Morocco. Rashid, we have 3 minutes.
Merci, Emilia. Vous m'entendez, je pense? Oui. Je vous remercie infiniment pour ma participation au 5e Forum des gouvernements locaux et régionaux sur l'agenda 2030. Heureux d'être parmi vous en tant que président de l'Organisation des Régions Unies, FOGAR, ainsi que vice-président Région Fort. Sur ces deux espaces, on n'a pas cessé de travailler avec, même si les conditions était un peu difficile lors de la pandémie, mais on a essayé de développer quelques ateliers, quelques thématiques sur lesquelles on a travaillé, qui se ramènent aux ODD. Région Fort qui se prépare aujourd'hui pour la COP 27 à Sharm el-Sheikh pour présenter un papier qui concerne les mesures à prendre par les gouvernements régionaux au sujet de ces changements climatiques et leurs répercussions sur la qualité de vie des populations. Il est difficile aujourd'hui d'avoir un schéma figé ou bien un protocole bien déterminé pour sortir de cette crise, la pandémie, maintenant la guerre entre la Russie et l'Ukraine. Maintenant, les pouvoirs d'achat, ils sont très touchés. La qualité de vie des populations aussi se voit dégradée de jour en jour avec cette hausse de prix qui est faramineuse, avec cette inflation qui s'installe de plus en plus. Je pense que le débat, il est ouvert maintenant et il faut qu'on fasse appel à une intelligence collective. Le rôle des gouvernements locaux, il ne devrait pas être classique et conventionnel. Aujourd'hui, les gouvernements locaux doivent jouer un rôle intermédiaire entre les politiques publiques des gouvernements centraux et aussi les besoins du territoire, des collectivités territoriales, quel que soit leur niveau. C'est à ce niveau-là qu'il doit y avoir la convergence en amont et en aval des politiques publiques et des besoins afin d'optimiser et de trouver des solutions adéquates. Aujourd'hui, avec le stress alimentaire et le stress hydrique, on a besoin de plus en plus de produits alimentaires, on a besoin de plus en plus d'eau. Il faut valoriser ces produits-là, il faut en faire bon usage. Il faut travailler sur la dépollution de l'eau qui est devenue une denrée de plus en plus rare. Les ODD, quant à la santé, l'éducation, on enregistre aujourd'hui quelques indicateurs à ce niveau-là qui sont trop bas. Et je pense que la solution ne peut pas provenir des gouvernements centraux. La solution, c'est au niveau des localités parce que chaque localité a sa spécificité, a son besoin. Et on doit adapter ces solutions-là à ces localités. Les gouvernements régionaux, les régions et les gouvernements régionaux ont cette capacité-là parce qu'ils sont plus proches du terrain que le gouvernement central qui, lui, élabore des stratégies transversales et il ne prend pas en considération les particularités de chaque zone. Aujourd'hui, et le problème qui se pose, c'est que ces collectivités territoriales, si petites soient-elles et si moyennes soient-elles, ont des difficultés de financement, ils ont des difficultés au niveau des ressources. Il faut que les gouvernements intermédiaires, les gouvernements régionaux, soient un appui à ces collectivités. Il faut leur trouver des sources de financement et c'est au niveau de Région Fort et de Lorifoga, nous travaillons sur ce sujet-là pour chercher des bailleurs de fonds, pour chercher aussi de l'expertise et la mettre à leur service pour minimiser un peu l'impact de ce qui se passe. Les VLS et les examens locaux volontaires, c'est un moyen, je pense que c'est un moyen aujourd'hui de faire l'évaluation des politiques qu'on met en place. C'est un moyen d'ajuster et de redresser redresser les politiques parce qu'à chaque fois, il y a des aléas nouveaux qui s'abattent et puis il faut toujours redresser la tendance. Il est très difficile aujourd'hui, d'une manière unilatérale, de la part des localités, des communes et des collectivités territoriales, il est très difficile aujourd'hui qu'elles seules trouvent la solution. Le rôle des gouvernements régionaux, c'est lui qui devrait être le parrain de ces collectivités-là. Nous avons un rôle à jouer. Nous devons créer plus d'espace d'échange. Nos expériences diffèrent selon les régions, selon les besoins, mais on peut toujours créer cet effet synergétique à travers les débats tels que celui que nous développons aujourd'hui. L'agenda 2030 s'est révélé être un cadre de référence incontournable pour parvenir à une reprise verte, juste et durable. La mise en œuvre des ODD au niveau local et l'élaboration de rapports de suivi des actions menées par les collectivités territoriales ainsi que les associations qui gravitent autour, VLR, VLS, selon leur acronyme, sont essentiels et constituent un catalyseur de changement. Des politiques transformatrices, d'une meilleure coopération entre les parties prenantes et d'une gouvernance multiniveau mieux adaptée, ainsi qu'un renforcement de la transparence et de la responsabilité de l'action publique. Les moments sont difficiles, et les solutions sont usées. Il faut qu'on travaille sur une optimisation des quelques ressources dont on dispose. Les régions du sud d'Afrique, je parle notamment de l'Afrique aujourd'hui, qui vit aujourd'hui un état de stress hydrique jamais vu. La pluviométrie a changé, ça a poussé vers la mobilité des populations vers le nord et on a récemment vu une grande mobilité sud-nord et il faut trouver les mécanismes pour fixer les populations là où ils sont et les doter de moyens de vie adéquats. C'est pas seulement les gouvernements régionaux qui vont traiter de cette particularité des localités, mais on doit tous travailler dans le sens de la fixation des populations et de leur trouver l'infrastructure, la suprastructure adéquate pour qu'ils puissent vivre d'une manière décente, ainsi développer une stratégie pour améliorer les indicateurs, que ce soit de la santé, que ce soit de l'éducation, que ce soit des infrastructures, de la mobilité réduite, pour l'intégration de ces gens-là. Il faut que les populations s'approprient et soient convaincus d'une manière inclusive toutes les stratégies pour pouvoir les réussir. Donc, tout le monde doit s'y mettre pour réussir ce chantier. Je vous remercie pour votre attention.
Thank you, Mr. Rashid El Abdi, for, again, a very informative presentation on the situation in Morocco. And I think you do highlight a very important issue, which is the cost of living. Cities and local authorities are dealing with that challenge in terms of making sure that their populations do not fall into poverty and they have access to adequate social protection. which is again on top of the challenges that have been brought on local governments because of the COVID situation. And I think you do underscore the importance of financing, and that most local authorities do face significant challenges when it comes to mobilizing local resources. Hence, there is need for governments to support local authorities in terms of resources as well as expertise. And of course, your important issue of how do we address the challenges of migration given issues of water stress and other climate-related challenges. And I think these are all very, very relevant issues. And I think we can learn more if we organize more discussions where we have local and regional governments to share experiences. Thanks very much for your remarks. Our next speaker is Jonan Fernandez, who is Secretary General for Social Transition and Agenda 2030 of the Presidency of the Basque Government. Jonan, you have 3 minutes.
Buenos días. Agradezco sinceramente a los organizadores la invitación a participar en este foro. Economizo los preámbulos para aprovechar los 3 minutos disponibles sin sobrepasarlos. El Gobierno vasco es un gobierno subestatal con un fuerte compromiso en materia de Agenda 2030. Comparto 4 referencias que en nuestro caso están siendo de gran utilidad: planificación, evaluación, gobernanza y método. Primero, planificación. El Gobierno vasco cuenta con un programa vasco de prioridades de la Agenda 2030. Es el plan de actuación para toda la legislatura. Define prioridades, compromisos tractores, proyectos emblemáticos y su misión es contribuir a un contrato social Agenda 2030. En segundo lugar, evaluación. Desde 2017, el Gobierno vasco ha realizado 5 informes voluntarios de seguimiento anual que ha presentado en Naciones Unidas. Todo este trabajo vinculado a un panel de indicadores propio que está alineado con el del sistema de Naciones Unidas. Este compromiso involucra en su elaboración a todas las áreas y departamentos del Gobierno, permite evaluar el trabajo desarrollado e identificar ámbitos de mejora. Tercero, gobernanza. Hemos constituido en el País Vasco el Foro Multiagente de Transición Social y Agenda 2030. Está presidido por el presidente del Gobierno vasco, Lehendakari, y forman parte de este órgano, además, todos los consejeros y consejeras del Gobierno vasco, los gobiernos territoriales de las diputaciones forales, la representación de los ayuntamientos, las universidades vascas, las entidades del tercer sector social de Euskadi y representantes de la colaboración público-privada y de distintos clústeres. Este foro cuenta con un plenario, una comisión permanente y 5 grupos de trabajo: gobernanza, agenda urbana, transformación social, transformación ecológica y transformación económica. Se configura de este modo el modelo vasco de gobernanza multinivel y multiactor de la Agenda 2030, contando con la colaboración pública, privada y social. En cuarto lugar, método. La Agenda 2030 corre un riesgo: perderse en un laberinto de conceptos abstractos. Abogamos por la metodología de lo concreto. Frente a la abstracción, compromiso con la concreción. En todos los ámbitos vinculados al desarrollo de la Agenda 2030, planteamos una metodología de trabajo basada en 2 herramientas. Una, la elaboración de planes de gestiones anuales con definición precisa de objetivos y proyectos concretos. Y 2, la elaboración de memorias anuales de cumplimiento o incumplimiento de estos planes de gestión. Termino. Debemos ser autocríticos y no autocomplacientes. A nivel global no estamos avanzando lo suficientemente rápido. La pandemia y la invasión de Ucrania han agravado los problemas y ha agrandado la urgencia de las soluciones en clave de desarrollo humano sostenible. Necesitamos una mayor proactividad en lo concreto y en lo transformador. Apelo para ello a una participación más representativa y significativa de los gobiernos subestatales. Esta participación es necesaria para mejorar el balance global de cumplimiento y desarrollo de los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Mr. Fernandez, for highlighting what the Basque government is implementing, in particular focusing on the 4 areas of planning, governance, evaluation, and making sure that at least you have all the key stakeholders involved within the 5 working groups that you have put in place, and underscoring again the importance of having public-private partnerships, as well as making sure that all voices are heard. And I think we do agree that it's very important to have annual working plans with very clear objectives that you can actually measure and track, and actually to follow up with good analytical reports that look at what is happening at the local level. And definitely we need to have in place sustainable solutions to the challenges that we face. Thank you very much for your remarks. Our next presenter is Belinda Gotardi, who is the mayor of Castel Maggiore. Belinda, you have 3 minutes.
Yes, thank you. So I'm talking about VSR. VSR Italy aims to tell the path that Italian local authorities have taken in recent years and what results they have achieved by applying the principles of the United Nations 2030 Agenda and the National Sustainable Development Strategy. It is produced by the joint work of ICRE and FEM, which for years have worked together to analyze and study tools suitable for local government level for achieving sustainable development. VSR provides the current legislative framework of local governments and their degree of involvement in localizing SDGs. Starting from the National Strategy for Sustainable Development, VSR focused on the municipal and supra-municipal level for all the 17 SDGs, where there aren't official indicators or statistic data. The analysis integrates qualitative and quantitative aspects to express the complexity, the variety, and heterogeneity of Italian local governments. 7,104 municipalities and 107 supra-municipal territorial entities. The qualitative analysis is based on the collection of local governments case studies for each of the 17 goals, while for the quantitative analysis, 48 indicators have been studied and selected. It is useful to remember that Global SDGs Cities Portal, Global Platform for SDGs Exchange as Venice City Solution 2030, National School on 2030 Agenda for Local Authorities, ICRE Local for Action Hub are tools already existing for the Italian municipalities for localizing SDGs. VSR Italy recommends a concrete mechanism of financial support for municipalities, regardless of their size. The organization of a data collection system at the local level, the definition of official indicators at the city level. Mayors, in fact, remain key players in the implementation of 2030 Agenda, both for the application of the holistic approach of SDGs and for the ease of guaranteeing a multi-stakeholder approach that leaves no one behind and rebuilds a new social pact with the citizens. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Belinda, for sharing with us what local authorities are doing in Italy. I think countries can learn a lot from the tools that you have put in place, including the Venice City Solution 2030, which I find to be very useful and very interesting. I think it's something that needs to be shared much more broadly with other stakeholders who want to learn from what Italy is doing. And of course, you have underscored the importance of valuing both the quantitative and the qualitative data that we have at the local level, and the need to make sure that we involve SDG localization efforts at the smallest levels, and make sure that mayors remain at the center of what is being done. But more importantly, they need to guarantee a multi-stakeholder partnership and to make sure that these local authorities have guaranteed access to adequate financing. I think those are very important points that you have brought to the table. Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Emilio Chaton, who is the mayor of Santa Fe. Emilio, you have 3 minutes.
Bueno, muchas gracias. Buenos días a todos, buenas tardes a todas y a todas también. Agradezco a los organizadores por invitar a Santa Fe Capital a participar de tan importante foro, en especial a Global Transform, al Departamento de Asuntos Económicos y Social de Naciones Unidas, al PNUD, a ONU Habitat y, por supuesto, Local 2030. Para Santa Fe, como ciudad intermedia, es muy importante contar con el apoyo de diferentes organizaciones y redes internacionales. Su acompañamiento es clave para nuestra proyección internacional y para fortalecer nuestro compromiso con la Agenda 2030 y también los ODS. Este año presentamos el primer reporte local voluntario de Santa Fe Capital. Con él reafirmamos nuestro compromiso con los Objetivos de Desarrollo Sostenible, con la convicción de profundizar nuestras acciones y nuestros proyectos en los años venideros. Desde el primer día de gestión, los ODS son ordenadores de nuestros proyectos estratégicos y han ocupado un lugar destacado en nuestra agenda de gobierno en Santa Fe Capital, Argentina. La alineación de los 60 proyectos estratégicos definidos por esta ciudad con los 17 ODS fue el primer paso. El reporte que presentamos este año, que prioriza el territorio del ODS 4, Educación de Calidad, y el ODS 11, Ciudades y Comunidades Sostenibles, profundiza ese camino y asegura su continuidad en el futuro. El reporte voluntario en Santa Fe nos ha permitido consolidar la premisa de la integración, por lo que tanto venimos trabajando en nuestra ciudad y nos ha dejado muchísimos aprendizajes. Alineamos nuestros principales proyectos estratégicos a los ODS, priorizando los ODS 4 y también el 11, con miras de reportar nuestros y nuevos objetivos en los próximos años. Contamos con nuestro punto focal, la Secretaría General, que es la encargada de coordinar todo el proceso, y en coordinación con la Agencia de Cooperación Internacional y Comercio Exterior, han sensibilizado a todas las áreas sobre la importancia de todas las políticas públicas locales que estén orientadas al cumplimiento de lo propuesto por la Agenda 2030. El trabajo interjurisdiccional es fundamental para la confección del reporte, para que esos indicadores sean un reflejo del territorio y nos permita construir información confiable. Las redes y organizaciones internacionales de los que Santa Fe participa son aliados claves que nos acompañan a lo largo de este proceso. Los reportes locales voluntarios son una herramienta de gestión valiosísima y nos permite instalar instituciones en nuestros gobiernos locales y visibilizar lo que estamos haciendo. Sabemos que terminar el reporte recién es el primer paso. Con su presentación y la socialización se abre la etapa de consolidación de sus resultados. Hay que afianzar los mecanismos institucionales logrados, profundizar la Agenda 2030 en el territorio local y también nuevos compromisos para el futuro. Las capacitaciones, las jornadas y las coordinaciones interdepartamentales se convierten en activos de gran peso para las ciudades. Funcionarios altamente formados y sensibilizados, área de gestión con solidez y rumbo claro, y la importancia fundamental de la coordinación de políticas con perspectivas de integralidad deben aprovecharse y consolidarse en el marco de las ciudades que traccionen, impulsen y también implementen la Agenda 2030. Todos los recursos del Sistema de Naciones Unidas para la presentación de los BLR son fundamentales y necesarios. Son herramientas que están a nuestro alcance y que podemos aprovechar en nuestros procesos de reporte. A través de estos recursos podemos intercambiar experiencias y profundizar nuestros alcances. Nos permite tener una mirada más amplia sobre las oportunidades y los problemas que compartimos con nuestras ciudades y regiones que también han encarado este proceso. Particularmente en la ciudad de Santa Fe nos apoyamos fuertemente en las herramientas de CGLU Learning, aprendiendo de otras experiencias de localización y tomando los aprendizajes relevantes de los talleres formativos brindados por el Departamento de Asuntos Económicos y Sociales de Naciones Unidas, del rol de intermediación que llevan adelante Mercociudades, que nos permite acercarnos a espacios globales, así como apoyarnos entre diferentes gobiernos locales y diseñar soluciones adaptadas a nuestra realidad. En Santa Fe creemos en la visión unificada. En Santa Fe creemos en la acción colaborativa. En Santa Fe creemos en el apoyo personalizado planteado por Naciones Unidas. Pero también necesitamos cooperación real. Los ODS son una meta, pero también son una conversación global de cómo queremos vivir. Los ODS nos obligan a pensar el mañana, pero además repensar nuestras responsabilidades individuales y colectivas, que es tarea de todos, que ya no puede esperar. Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Emilio, for very, again, interesting intervention. I think you, and first of all, congratulations to Santa Fe for preparing its first local review. I think we look forward to going through the report, and I'm sure we will learn a lot. But I think in your remarks, you did touch on, I think, all the critical areas, the importance of integrating the 23rd agenda at the local level, the importance of coordination, the importance of raising awareness to make sure that all your citizens and stakeholders are aware of what's happening, the importance of capacity building, especially for those who are, we have the responsibility to implement this, and these are your civil servants, and of course the importance of cooperation. We can all learn from each other. And I think you put it rightly, SDGs are indeed a global conversation of how we want to live. And this platform that we're having today is contributing to that conversation. And we hope when we leave today, we will have learned a few important points that we can try to localize in our situations. Thank you again for sharing the experience of Santa Fe. Our next presenter is Luz Amparo Medina, who is the Director of International Relations, Bogotá.
Buen día a todas y todos. Un saludo en nombre de la alcaldesa Claudia López, a los organizadores, a los panelistas, a los participantes el día de hoy. Lo primero que quisiera compartir con ustedes es que Bogotá se ha tomado muy en serio las agendas globales. El programa de gobierno con el cual fue electa la alcaldesa Claudia López fue estructurado alrededor de 16 de los 17 ODS. Y esta voluntad que fue expresada en las urnas fue luego validada por el Consejo de la Ciudad al adoptar el Plan Distrital de Desarrollo como el principal instrumento de planificación que incorpora y pone alrededor de 5 propósitos de ciudad los 16 objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Luego, esta es una ciudad que a través de su plan distrital de desarrollo, en el marco de su plan de acción climática, en el marco del plan de ordenamiento territorial, ha tenido no solamente una voluntad, sino una materialización concreta, real, de su apuesta por la Agenda 2030 y las agendas globales en general, incluyendo los acuerdos de París, el marco de Sendai y la nueva agenda urbana en particular, como fue expresado y reiterado por la alcaldesa Claudia López recientemente en el Foro Urbano Mundial, donde fue designada por ONU Habitat como embajadora de la nueva agenda urbana y del ODS 11 particularmente. Este año, en el marco de la Semana de los Objetivos Globales en septiembre, vamos a lanzar el primer informe local voluntario. Este informe ha sido estructurado alrededor de 5 ODS, del ODS 1, 5, 8, 11 y 13, en los cuales hacemos un zoom particular y resaltamos un enfoque para la elaboración de este informe alrededor de la colaboración con los principales aliados de la ciudad para el avance de la agenda, porque entendemos que cumplir la Agenda 2030 no corresponde exclusivamente a las ciudades, sino es un trabajo en alianza y en sociedad muy estrecha con actores claves del sector privado, de la sociedad civil y de la comunidad en su conjunto, de los bogotanos en su conjunto. Entonces, la elaboración de este VLR ha sido una oportunidad, una ocasión justamente para celebrar y visibilizar la contribución de todos estos actores adicional a los avances que la administración viene realizando en la implementación de su plan distrital de desarrollo, pero en esa medida también en el avance de los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible. Estamos alineados no solamente con las agendas globales, sino en la elaboración del VLR, hemos estado en coordinación muy estrecha con el gobierno nacional y los informes nacionales voluntarios que también ya en el caso de Colombia han presentado 3 hasta el momento. Luego hemos aprovechado de manera sustancial la experiencia a nivel nacional, pero también a través de las plataformas que nos han facilitado tanto CGLU como ONU Habitat y Brookings Institution particularmente. Hemos contado con lineamientos, con guías, con experiencias previas que nos han sido supremamente importantes para expresar nuestras apuestas y darles mucha más relación con el mundo, ponerlas a dialogar con otras experiencias. Y creo que alrededor de la elaboración de estos VLR hay una comunidad de práctica en marcha que transfiere conocimientos, transfiere aprendizajes, y por eso quisiera aprovechar esta oportunidad para reconocer y agradecer la contribución que tanto CGLU como ONU Habitats, como Brookings Institutions nos han brindado en todo este proceso. A nivel de institucionalización y pensando en el largo plazo, se ha constituido una fuerza de trabajo interna dentro de la Alcaldía Mayor de Bogotá, liderada por la Secretaría Distrital de Planeación, de la cual también hace parte pues, el despacho de la alcaldesa y el equipo de delivery y la Dirección Distrital de Relaciones Internacionales, para trabajar de manera intersectorial, interinstitucional, con un enfoque que una muy bien, de manera muy concreta, los datos y la batería de información que tiene muy robusta la ciudad alrededor de los programas que implementa, con esta visión internacional para conectar justamente las dinámicas locales con toda este movimiento global en favor de estas agendas urbanas, globales y muy particularmente alrededor de los ODS. En este momento, y ya terminando nuestro mandato, nos falta 1 año y medio para finalizar, estamos trabajando en la institucionalización de una política de largo plazo, aquí las denominamos un COMPES para los ODS, de manera que podamos institucionalizar y dejar sentadas las bases para que este momento que se ha instituido durante esta administración tenga vocación de largo plazo y pueda trabajar hacia adelante. Yo solo quisiera finalizar con un comentario evocando a la alcaldesa Claudia López, subrayando la importancia de entender que estas agendas globales son nuestra tabla para garantizar la subsistencia del planeta y de los humanos, y que nuestros esfuerzos tienen que estar articulados alrededor del cuidado de las personas, porque son ampliando sus oportunidades, particularmente de las mujeres y de los jóvenes, que vamos a garantizar regímenes democráticos que en últimas son las democracias las que son empáticas y las que garantizan una sostenibilidad también del planeta. Así que muchísimas gracias por esta oportunidad, y seguimos trabajando muy de la mano con todos ustedes para avanzar en estos propósitos globales.
Thank you, Luis Amparo Medina, for your presentation. I think I had the privilege to meet Mayor Claudia Lopez when she visited New York, I think last month, for the event that was organized here on urban issues. We had a very interesting chat, and I think you have underscored some of the key messages that you have shared with us today, which include that she campaigned on the SDGs. I think she's the first mayor that we have had who campaigned on the SDG platform and is trying her best to implement, and we wish her all the best. And I think she will do well. And of course, I think you have underscored the importance of making sure that although you are preparing a new local review this year and focusing on a few select SDGs, I think it's always important to remember that all the SDGs are interlinked and interrelated. So do not forget the other SDGs that might not be your primary focus, but I think those interlinkages are very, very important. And I think the importance of building these alliances.
I think we have lost our facilitator. There you are again. Um,
I'm back. I don't know.
You're back. Yes, we hear you. Go ahead.
Thank you. I think you did address the importance of planets, and they need to put people at the center and give them opportunities, especially women and the youth. And of course, they need to promote democracy. I think these are all very, very important elements. And we need to make sure that we connect to local governments at what is happening at the global level. And so make sure that forget about the Paris Agreement, this entire framework, as well as the 23rd Agenda, and of course the Addis Ababa Action Plan. Those they're all linked, and they do support efforts at the local level. Thank you again for your intervention.
Since we have lost you again, I'm sorry, I'm going to just go ahead and invite the next speaker, Lusanda Batala, Senior Sector Expert of the National Planning Commission Secretariat of South Africa. And hopefully you will be back soon, Amson, to continue the session. Lusanda Batala, you've got the floor.
I should be.
Thank you, Ms. Moderator, and greetings to all the excellencies and all protocol observed. And thank you for inviting us as South Africa to come and share our own experiences in terms of the localization of the SDGs. I think we can all agree that, for example, from South Africa's perspective, that there is no development that can happen without the involvement of the local sphere of society. I think that's one area that is very much important that we need to sort of remember. And also implementation in terms of the SDGs and any development agenda happens at a local level. Whilst we are faced with the crisis, there's a need for us to look at the opportunities that the COVID pandemic has brought about change on how the local government operates and advance the SDGs in a highly constrained environment. I think there are some lessons that we can learn from how we sort of responded, to the COVID crisis in terms of having where there was a situation of, looking for, a community level kind of a data. A situation whereby we're supposed to engage communities with regard to how the virus affects them. And also the pandemic sort of raised issues of identifying vulnerable groups, within communities. That's why I think, the pandemic sort of shared with us in terms of the importance of the local sphere of government. But from South Africa's perspective, in terms of how we approach, the localization of SDGs, for us, it took us, some years back, whereby we started in a process of how we domesticate the SDGs into the South African space, whereby we started with understanding, first of all, how is the SDGs aligned to the National Development Plan? For us, that was the first step. And also within that analysis, we also try to analyze how also the National Development Plan speaks to the Provincial Growth Development Plan and also to the integrated development plans at a local level. Once we understand that seamless movement from the local sphere all the way to the National Development Plan and then to the SDGs, then for us it was sort of a matter of how do we implement now the SDGs, not just at a national level, but also at a local level. For example, if you look at the principles that are underlying the SDGs, it's about leaving no one behind. It's about putting the sustainable development at the core. It's about transforming the economies for inclusive growth. It's about building peace and effective, open and accountable institutions for all. And it's about forging partnerships for development. How can you sort of reach all those principles if the local sphere is there? Local sphere is the one that is close to the people, whereby engagement with the communities in order to make sure that you leave no one behind is happening at a local sphere. So that's why it is important that we make sure that implementation takes place at the local sphere. And also, like, you know, there's a quote by Joel Barber, which says, vision without action is merely a dream. Action without vision just passes the time. But vision with action can change the world. That's what Joel Barber said. And where does the action happen? Action doesn't happen at a national space. Action happens at a local level where people matter. A vision can be defined at a higher level, but the action of the vision takes place at a local sphere. Without that, like, you know, we need to sort of like share that. And also in terms of implementing, you know, the development plans. You cannot implement the development plan in a silo mentality. You need collaboration with other stakeholders in order to make sure that you develop, in order to make sure that you implement, you know, the development plan. For South Africa's case, we've sort of like, you know, in 2019 came up with a national coordination mechanism to make sure that the implementation of the SDGs, Agenda 2063 and SADC happens within South Africa. Even though the national coordination is at a national level, we've made sure that within the steering committee that drives the national coordination in terms of implementation of SDGs in South Africa, there is a local sphere that sits in at that central committee in order to make sure that work does happen at a local level. So therefore, in terms of South Africa, there are 3 key principles that we abide by for implementation. The whole of government society approach, whereby partnership, co-ownership, and collaboration is important. Prioritization, focus, and resources. For us to be able to prioritize and focus, we need to make sure that local sphere is there. And also for us to be able to make sure that we understand the progress of where we are going, we need to monitor and measure in terms of progress. And we need the local sphere in terms of advising us of where we are in terms of the implementation. And most importantly, we need leadership and accountability. In South Africa, there is a case whereby the eThekwini municipality has started to do voluntary local review, whereby they incorporated, you know, the SDGs into their IDP, and also through their Municipal Institute of Learning program, the city hosts master classes for capacity building. Also, the eThekwini municipality used innovative approach to align each SDG indicator to the municipal capital budget. And also in terms of the standardization of the building environment indicators, they have aligned them to the SDGs. And also the municipalities has had SDG Indaba, which was hosted by the municipality in order to share knowledge and provide some opportunities for the municipalities to highlight key areas of concern where relevant national and provincial governments need to act. As I indicated, we do have institutional mechanism for monitoring and reporting. And also we sort of like, you know, the municipality, for example, eThekwini has worked with the UNDESA to train the trainer at eThekwini municipality, and also further created a pool of SDG facilitators at the country level. And also currently we are planning as a country to invite UNDESA to come and capacitate our municipalities, as they are now much more interested in doing, you know, the voluntary local reviews. For us as South Africa, VLR contribution to SDGs achievement is in terms of assisting with evaluating and monitoring progress. VLRs enables the whole of society approach, whereby civic participation within the country. VLRs also help us to identify priority areas for local sustainable action. But most importantly, VLR assists us to make sure that when we complete, for example, the voluntary national review, we leave no one behind. So we see VLR process as a tool that needs to be anchored to make sure that it contributes to the voluntary national review that takes place in South Africa. I thank you, Ms. Moderator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Again, a very interesting presentation of the case of South Africa. You are right, no development can happen without the involvement of the local populations. These top-down approaches, I think we find out that they do have significant challenges. Also, we need to foster communication between what is happening at the local level as well as the national level, including within the intermediary level. You're right, COVID-19, although it was a change for all countries, it also did opportunities to local and regional governments. And in particular, how do you identify groups in vulnerable situations? I think South Africa and other countries have done well to take this challenge, to identify those groups and to better target support, whether
we have lost our facilitator again. He has challenges, as you can hear, but we are going ahead with the executive director of the League of Cities. Oh, I'm sorry. There you are again, Amson. Didn't want to overstep, just try to help.
Thank you very much for the support. And the technology is misbehaving. But otherwise, I think Mr. Luxanda, you did, of course, touch on what South Africa is doing in the importance of all of governments. Very important, importance of prioritization. They need to focus and they need to commit sufficient adequate resources to whatever you're trying to do. Of course, monitoring the evaluation, leadership, accountability, and of course, making sure that the local sphere, the local voice is heard. And as DESA, we look forward to supporting and working with you as we capacitate more local authorities so that at least they can link the local reviews to what is happening at the national level. So thank you very much.
Okay, I really think he's gone now. But we do have the executive director of the League of Cities of the Philippines with us, Veronica Hitosis. Welcome, dear friend. We're really happy that you are with us. Very late for you. Thank you for your patience. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Emilia. Good morning, good afternoon, and very late evening here in Manila. It's already 10 p.m. where I'm at, so it's very late to be staying at the office. So it kind of shows you what kind of social life I have. So I'm gonna make sure that I'll have keep on the time. So our story in the Philippines, by the way, Amelia, I just want to thank your team for being patient with us and really extending assistance in the voluntary subnational review. We are at the tail end of the report. We can share it by next week, hopefully, with all the pictures and the nice thoughts that you want to share with you this evening. So our story is a story of partnership. The voluntary subnational review helped our provinces, cities, and municipalities in the Philippines to forge new partnership as we contribute to the achievement of the goals. In fact, the first Philippine VSR documents how provinces, cities, and municipalities in the Philippines are achieving the goals and in various stages of achieving the goals. We're focusing on gender and development, education, and health. I think that was shared also by the previous speakers and I think happening globally. So cities, there's a very passionate, there's a strong aspiration to really focus on the goals. For provinces, we see in the results of the survey that they can do it on their own, while municipalities need assistance, specifically from national governments. So it opens the line of communication from our planning agency, who reports in the high-level political forum. In fact, one of our city who's doing the voluntary local review, Naga City, was featured in the national report, pages 90 to 91 to be exact. So I think just in closing, we found two challenges for provinces, cities, and municipalities. Financial limitation across the board remain key and pervasive challenge for local governments. So rational and practical prioritization of the goals will happen. And I think what this means is some goals we will achieve, while some will be lagging behind. And I think midpoint to the SDG 2030, there's still much to be done towards the localizing the goals for Philippine provinces, cities, and municipalities. Although most, if not all, the goals have correspondent devolved function as stated in our local government code, there's still a need to heighten not only the awareness, which is what we're doing right now, the 3 local associations of provinces, cities, and municipalities, but I think what's more important is to create a conscious buy-in from our members to localize the goals into specific concrete programs, projects, and activities so that we can directly address or create huge impact for sustainable development. I think that was shared earlier. It's time for action, Emilia. So we can no longer afford to be on the sidelines of achieving the sustainable development. I think that's what we can share for now. And thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Ms. Veronica Hitosis. And I think you do underscore the importance of a critical issue, which is that, yes, cities do have probably a wider base for them to mobilize resources, but other smaller municipalities do have challenges when it comes to mobilizing the resources that they need to implement the 2030 agenda. Hence, it is important for national governments to support some of the small local authorities that we are encouraging to conduct these local reviews. And of course, making sure that we do prioritize and raise awareness to make sure that we do create indeed a conscious buy-in if we are to have a huge impact. So again, congratulations and for what the Philippines is doing and for making sure that you do highlight some of the local progress in the Voluntary National Review report. I think that is very, very important. Cities always want to see what they're doing reflected in a report that ends up being discussed at the high-level political forum. I think we have reached the end of our session, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank each and every one of you for your very interesting and informative remarks, and we look forward to our continued discussion. So back to you, Amelia. And I know we have gone over the limits, but I hope we should be able to catch up. So Amelia, back to you.
Thank you, Amson. A great job with challenging connection. Thank you so much to all the participants of this part of the session. And we are going now without a pause, right in gaining some time to the next session that is going to be moderated by Rafael Toots, the Director of Global Solutions Division of UN Habitat, a dear colleague that has been in this good fight with us for a long time on localization and that is working with us on the promotion of voluntary local reviews and voluntary subnational reviews. This session is about moving beyond the reporting and the multi-level governance and multi-stakeholder collaboration, which we have experienced in the development of the voluntary subnational reviews that have been described. Raf, back to you. Good luck. A very interesting panel for you to facilitate. And thank you for being here, dear friend.
Thank you so much, Emilia, for the introduction. And indeed, we are going to shift gears a little bit and move towards multi-level governance and multi-stakeholder collaboration. Before I introduce the panel, I would like to say a few words connecting the first with the second panel. Indeed, VLRs and VSRs are proving to be very promising, very useful tools for reporting and monitoring, but also to advance different dimensions of SDG localization. And we also see that they have been an entry point to kickstart the localization of the global goals. And it's also important to note that they would help the VLRs and the VSRs in the integration of the SDGs into city strategies, city budgets, and also the participation of communities can be enhanced through these processes. So we heard from the previous speakers that there is opportunities to revamp the discussion on multi-level governance in this context, and that's exactly what we're going to do with the next eight speakers. I would like to also say that UN Habitat is supporting this process in different ways. We are supporting the overall VLR global movement by providing knowledge and also technical assistance to cities. And also connecting them with international fora, including United Nations fora. We also have a United Nations SDG Cities flagship initiative, where we facilitate collaboration to achieve the achievement, to accelerate the achievement of the SDGs. And in this cycle of SDG cities, the VLRs are considered both a point of departure and a point of arrival of the localization process. And also we're going to launch tomorrow a digital platform on global research on multi-level governance for the SDGs. And this is the first consolidated effort on this topic, which we do in collaboration with ARCO, UCLG, LSE Cities, Brookings Institute, and the Nelson Mandela School of Public Governance. And this will be posted in the chat so that you can have a look if you're interested in this digital platform. And finally, as our executive director has said, we will be coordinating the secretariat of the Local 2030 Coalition, which indeed is a new UN-wide initiative to connect the monitoring of SDGs with United Nations processes at the local level led by resident coordinators, including other dimensions as well. But without further ado now, I would like to move towards the 8 panelists that we have for you today, which will focus on this new topic of multi-level governance. And I will introduce them by asking one lead question, and then I would like to for each panelist that they would try to limit their intervention to 3 minutes, as was in the previous panel. So our first panelist is the mayor of Kuala Lumpur, Mr. Mahadi Chengga. And I have a question for the mayor. 2 years ago, at the World Urban Forum 10, Kuala Lumpur undertook to commit doing a VLR, and the mayor worked very much with the SDGs and with different partners in Malaysia, such as Urbanize Malaysia. And I would like to ask you, based on your experience, in which ways a VLR can influence SDG planning, and what are the opportunities that VLR process presents to strengthen collaboration with the national government? Mayor, you have 3 minutes, please.
Thank you, Rafa, for the kind introduction. Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, a very good day to one and all. Since 2017, the government of Malaysia has been committed to reporting our voluntary national review, or VNR, every 4 years. Inspired by the nation's commitment to the VNR process, the Kuala Lumpur Voluntary Local Review, VLR, was put in place in 2021 to ensure the alignment of our Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, progress with national goals and policies. This has enabled Kuala Lumpur City Hall, the City Council, to better identify gaps and challenges, as well as priority actions in localizing and implementing the SDGs in this capital city. The localization of SDGs in Kuala Lumpur is reflected in the incorporation of the 17 SDGs within our Kuala Lumpur Structure Plan 2040 Kuala Lumpur Local Plan 2040, Kuala Lumpur Low Carbon Society Blueprint 2030, and the Climate Action Plan 2050. Beyond this, the utilization of the VLR has provided us with a bird's eye view to identify potential synergies between various stakeholders, thus helping us to leverage great opportunities to foster city-regional diplomacy, national and international cooperation as we implement the SDGs. In the spirit of multi-stakeholder collaboration, we have continued our efforts to realize the SDGs within the Kuala Lumpur SDG City Roadmap 2030. This roadmap, which has been implemented last year, was prepared together with various stakeholders and key community players, including businesses, schools, youth, and marginalized groups, as well as relevant government agencies. Ladies and gentlemen, while both the VNR and VLR are fresh tools to Malaysia and Kuala Lumpur, we are confident that it will continue to spur society-wide action and multi-level SDG governance. Additionally, we will continue to encourage further multi-stakeholder collaborations and cooperations through our SDG Center Digital Twin. This SDG Center Digital Twin will serve as an effective platform to share and disseminate information with other stakeholders. It is our hope that this will help all parties to localize and implement the SDGs and New Urban Agenda with a long-lasting impact. We continue to strengthen our national and international collaborations for localization of SDGs with Tokyo Metropolitan Government, Institute for Global Environmental Studies, UCLG ASPAC, GCOM, CityNet, and C40 cities. While at the national level, there are growing numbers of supports from our counterparts such as Urbanist Malaysia, National Energy Limited, Sustainable Energy Development Authority, Malaysia Technology of Malaysia, University Technology of Malaysia, Ministry of Education of Malaysia, just to name a few. Ladies and gentlemen, Kuala Lumpur City Hall is indeed committed to localizing and implementing the SDGs. To this end, we will continue to push the sustainable agenda for the benefit of all KLites and to shape a sustainable, livable, resilient, and inclusive Kuala Lumpur for all. Ladies and gentlemen, with that, I end my speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mayor, for your commitment and contribution, also emphasizing the connection with the plans of your city and your country, as well as the inclusive process and the very wide partnerships that you have deployed in executing this VLR process. I will now move to Argentina, to the province of Cordoba, where we have Ms. Silvina Rivero, Minister of Coordination at the province. And I would like to ask to congratulate Ms. Rivero for the recently published first VLR of the province. And I understand that Argentina will also publish its first VSR and the third national review as well. So would you say that SDG reporting at these three levels has contributed to improve multi-level collaboration? And what's the experience of the province? Over to you.
Muy buenos días a todos. Muchísimas gracias en nombre del Gobierno de la provincia de Córdoba y de nuestro gobernador Juan Schiaretti por la participación. La provincia de Córdoba ha presentado días atrás su primer informe voluntario. A nivel nacional están presentando en estos días ya el tercer informe, pero para nuestro caso es la primera experiencia en materia de informe voluntario, pero sí tenemos como provincia una larga trayectoria en reportar todas nuestras acciones y siempre bajo mecanismos o metodologías de validación o estándares internacionales en este afán de comunicar los principales hitos de nuestra gestión. En materia de Agenda 2030, permítanme simplemente hacer un comentario para la provincia de Córdoba. La priorización que surge luego de todo un trabajo de territorialización tiene que ver con el eje social, fundamentalmente con el capítulo de objetivos vinculados a personas, buscando ese desarrollo social fundamentalmente a través de la generación del empleo, y ese empleo que sea proveniente de un crecimiento económico sostenible basado en una diversificación de matriz productiva que tenga que ver con nuestras principales potencialidades y trabajando de manera interactiva o mancomunada con los distintos sectores. Entonces, en materia de gobernanza multinivel y multiactoral, hay un fuerte trabajo que se viene desarrollando en la provincia de Córdoba, y más allá de que se puede leer sobre el mismo en nuestro informe voluntario, me gustaría resaltar algunas acciones que venimos llevando adelante. Nuestro eje social claramente está atravesado, muy atravesado, por cuestiones muchas veces macroeconómicas que exceden la capacidad de intervención en ese sentido de los gobiernos locales o de los gobiernos regionales. Hoy nuestro país tiene niveles importantes de tasa de inflación o de tasa de desempleo o de pobreza, generado muchas veces por decisiones que los gobiernos locales en las cuales no pueden muchas veces interferir o no tienen toda la capacidad de intervenir, pero sí es nuestro desafío como gobiernos locales cómo generamos instancias que amortigüen muchas veces ese impacto de condiciones sobre las cuales no tenemos capacidad de decidir. Por eso la generación de empleo, por eso buscar cuáles son nuestras principales potencialidades a nivel socioeconómico y trabajar con los distintos actores. Nosotros participamos en materia de gobernanza multinivel en muchos espacios del gobierno nacional que tienen que ver con áreas de la salud, de la educación, de la tecnología, y también con otras provincias, pero nuestro principal trabajo de interacción en gobernanza multinivel tiene que ver con los gobiernos locales. La provincia de Córdoba, permítanme comentarles, tiene una particularidad, es la provincia de Argentina que más gobiernos locales tiene, 427 municipios y comunas distribuidos en unos 165.000 kilómetros cuadrados, que es nuestra superficie, con mucha diversidad cultural, geográfica, social, entre estos gobiernos. Entonces ahí se nos presenta un desafío importante de interacción. Entonces, en esa experiencia, en esa interacción, es donde hacemos principalmente foco en cuando hablamos de gobernanza multinivel. Con los gobiernos locales interactuamos en una mesa provincia-municipios, en donde se definen las prioridades, se delinean los programas y en general se coadministran dichos programas. A modo de ejemplo, y más allá de que se da en todas las áreas, un caso son los programas alimentarios. Por ejemplo, los programas alimentarios en comedores estudiantiles, a través de los cuales se atienden por día a más de 320.000 niños de las escuelas de gestión pública, en esos casos, en esos programas, es el gobierno de la provincia quien define las reglas de admisión, define las dietas calóricas, aporta los fondos, y son los gobiernos locales que día a día o en el día a día administran esos comedores, hacen el servicio, manejan las cocinas de los mismos. Ese ejemplo de uno de los programas se replica en esto de coadministrar con los gobiernos locales, en los programas vinculados a déficit habitacional, al desarrollo de infraestructura urbana, en los programas vinculados a atención de las mujeres víctimas de violencia de género, en los programas vinculados, por ejemplo, a la salud, donde los gobiernos locales tienen la atención primaria y los hospitales provinciales tienen la atención de salud de segundo nivel, de alta complejidad, pero se integran con la historia clínica única digital en ese sentido. Lo mismo ocurre, por ejemplo, en los programas de movilidad urbana y de asistencia o de subsidio muchas veces a la demanda del acceso al transporte público de poblaciones con ciertos indicadores de vulnerabilidad. Y así podría dar una serie de ejemplos, pero en definitiva lo que quiero resaltar en gobernanza multinivel, la importancia como gobierno provincial de trabajar coadministrando y definiendo prioridades junto a los gobiernos locales. Y en materia de gobernanza multiactoral, también la provincia tiene una gran experiencia de trabajo con el sector privado, con el sector académico. Córdoba es una provincia que tiene 2 universidades, con más de 250.000 alumnos en el nivel universitario dentro del territorio provincial. Hay una fuerte interacción con el sector académico y en general por ejemplo, hablé de una diversificación de matriz productiva. La nueva matriz se trabajó con la academia, con la Universidad Católica en este caso, y con organismos internacionales. Nos acompañó, por ejemplo, la Universidad de Deusto. Se trabaja y con la unión industrial que reúne a todas las empresas de la provincia de Córdoba. Bueno, esa dinámica de trabajo conjunto se replica prácticamente en todos los programas y muchas veces alcanza un nivel de desarrollo que termina formalizándose en estructuras donde convivimos distintos actores. Y voy a mencionar rápidamente 3 ejemplos. Tenemos dentro de la estructura de gobierno 2 sociedades de economía mixta, en donde no solamente que el sector privado participa junto al sector público en esa estructura societaria y en el órgano directivo en el cual se deciden los programas y las acciones que se van a llevar adelante de manera conjunta, sino que también cofinancian las acciones que deriven de esas decisiones. Esto ocurre en 2 sociedades, decía. Una es la Agencia Innovar y Emprender, que refiere a todo lo que tiene que ver con el emprendedurismo, con las incubadoras, con las aceleradoras, con el desarrollo de ese tipo de sectores. Otra es la Agencia Pro Córdoba, que básicamente atiende las cuestiones que hacen al desarrollo exportador de las pequeñas y medianas empresas. Otra figura donde se da esta formalización público-privada son los consorcios únicos. Acá están las entidades que representan al sector agropecuario, que es un sector de mucha incidencia en la economía provincial, y el gobierno de la provincia de Córdoba. En estas entidades que administra un fideicomiso, este consorcio que se nutre de los aportes que hacen los productores rurales a través del impuesto inmobiliario rural. En esta entidad se definen cuáles son las obras prioritarias que se van a realizar con esos fondos en materia de rutas productivas o caminos productivos. Se somete a consideración de los beneficiarios de esas obras la sugerencia, y si más del 50% de los beneficiarios lo aprueba, se llevan adelante a través de organismos públicos. Distintos ejemplos de trabajo multiactoral, multinivel de la provincia, que en definitiva lo que resaltan es la importancia de trabajar todos los actores en conjunto. Es como la parte más difícil en materia de implementación de agenda, pero también es la parte más necesaria si queremos efectivamente hablar de un desarrollo sostenible. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you very much, Ms. Silvina Rivera, for this good examples, actually, both in terms of substance, where you give several examples of the different sectors that you're able to connect through your initiatives, as well as the diversity of partnerships. But we need to move on now, and we're going now to Portugal, where we will have the honor to be able to listen to Ms. Luisa Salgueiro, Mayor of Matosinhos, Portugal. And of course, the city of Matosinhos was the host of the local and regional government special events related to the Oceans Conference, very recent. at the end of last month. And the city has demonstrated important commitment to localization of SDG 14, protection of oceans. And so we would like to hear from you whether your experience, a bit more about your experience in local reporting and why it is important to advance the implementation of the SDGs. Over to you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank the invitation and the chance to participate in this panel, particularly to UNDESA that we have been working with. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, the coastal cities are crucial to build the resilience and incorporate nature-based solutions to protect local populations. We had the honor, as you just said, to host the United Nations Oceans Conference during last week, and I would like to underline some key messages. First of one, the coastal territories adaptation must be considered at larger territorial scale, from megalopolis to secondary cities and small towns. The more vulnerable urban areas have to collaborate at regional scale to better design sustainable coastal adaptation strategies. It is crucial to reinforce cooperation at every level and encourage a whole of society approach. Second one, climate coastal adaptation is changing towards a new sustainable paradigm. There is no one-fit-all solution. Managed retreat, nature-based solution, hard and soft coastal protection, technical innovations, early warning systems, raising awareness, and education are all relevant responses that have to be combined considering the local context. Third one, key coastal stakeholders all have to be engaged in the global coastal transition for a sustainable blue economy, a well-adapted coastline, and an equitable future. Local decision makers, population, and civil society with boards, tourism sector, and privates should all be part of the co-construction process. Number 4, coastal adaptation and resilience must include societal issues. Many communities have difficult time securing funds and techniques for equitable coastal resilience. Targeting youth and women in terms of livelihood, coastal adaptation might be an opportunity to reduce poverty and social inequalities. Number 5, the model of adaptation does not need totally new. The local and regional governments must innovate with the concern of the advantage of all the past knowledge of the past experience. Number 6, international funds must invest in universal projects to maximize the impact away from the local community. Cooperation between international organizations and local communities are crucial, but the measurement of the impacts is needed too. Number 7, the people engagement is essential to obtain great adaptations. The decentralization of the decision-making approach is important to understand the issue and the policies decided to protect the biodiversity and the ocean's ecosystems. And number 8, the collaborative governance is the advantage of the all stakeholders. The stakeholders must be voiced and have presence in the decision table. As we have seen, municipalities are committed to the societal challenge, reinforcing the supply of renewable energies, increasing energy efficiency, and reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Local power and municipalities, as well as regional governments across the world, are the key to develop fundamental efforts and decisions to protect the ocean and its resources. Matosinhos, our own city, is a coastal city, and has been working toward building a more resilient and sustainable city. We have recently become the first Portuguese city recognized as a resilience hub, a testament to our abilities of emergency planning, of anticipating and organizing responses, of managing resources and support structures. But the biggest challenge is to balance decarbonization and resilience to climate change with a sustainable economic growth, job creation, and interterritorial cohesion. Local communities of many coastal cities depend directly on the ocean for their livelihoods, and as such, protecting these ecosystems is also protecting these jobs. Specifically, the blue economy is an extraordinary opportunity to create new jobs that help promote a sustainable environment. Matosinhos is a member of the Blue Act Network and is also working in the strength the city's economy through the promotion of the cluster of knowledge with research and development institutions, through the renovations of the tourism dynamic, through the renovations of the canning industry, or through the promoting of a port competitiveness pole in a highly exporting region. So, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, finally, we are really committed to build an open, global, and sustainable blue economy. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, for your, I think, really good example of how a relatively small city can set an example on localization of SDG 14. And also the 8 messages that you projected have not only value for SDG 14, but also for all the sustainable development goals. And your emphasis on resilience and sustainability at the end is also very much appreciated. We're now going to stay on the Iberian Peninsula, but move to the east side. And that is with Ms. Victoria Alsina, who is the Chancellor of Foreign Action and Open Government of Catalonia. We know that Catalonia has been a global good practice, particularly related to the implementation of global agreements at the local level. And your visioning has inspired many other local governments to do the same. And we would like to ask you how, based on your experience, how can local and subnational reviews contribute to improve community participation, and how such reviews can also contribute to your own strategic planning? Over to you, Ms. Alsina.
Thank you so much, fellow panelists, organizers of the Local and Regional Governments Forum, and participants that are connected in this session. So I'm grateful for the opportunity to participate in this forum, as my colleagues did before, and to have the opportunity, as the moderator said, to talk to you from the perspective of Catalonia in something that we have been working around for a long period of time. And here, for the topic that we are covering today, I will focus on this SDG number 16 that calls for accountable and inclusive institutions at all levels to build peaceful and inclusive societies. Because we can only achieve this if we really have the capacity as public institutions to empower and listen to the people. And here, when I say empower and listen to the people, I mean really having the ability to capture the collective intelligence that is around our societies. And this is something, like it happens sometimes, that is easier said than done, right? Because when you need to put that in practice, it's always, I should say, challenging. But this is the basis of everything, how we capture the collective intelligence of the people. And when I say people, I mean companies, I mean entities, I mean the organized civil society, but also the citizens, because only if we take the voice of all these stakeholders involved, we have the capacity to really apply the subsidiarity principle and this multi-level governance that we are discussing today. As we all know well, COVID-19 gave us an opportunity to put in practice, to experience new opportunities here, and we have a collection of good practices that is very useful if we exchange them. And also, I should say that occurred at some point a wave of recentralization in many countries, sometimes by accident, sometimes by design. So what happens and what we find around is that in a lot of cases, the multi-level governance in practice is understood as regions carrying out actions designed before previously at the state level. So they are only participating in a piece of this process. And it's true that not only because sometimes we have the competence, but also to be more efficient, because we are the best equipped actors to do it, we need to make our voices heard. And in the framework of the COVID initiatives, let me just dedicate 30 seconds to say that Catalonia joined forces with 30 regions in Europe from 10 member states in the European Union, and we created a network that it is called Regions for EU Recovery. And what we are trying to do through that network is precisely to put in value that the role of the regions in the framework of the reconstruction post-COVID. But I should say that this is something that we cannot only do at the public administration level, we need to involve the public sector. So another piece of the cake here is really understanding how we can put in practice this collaboration between private and public actors, and how can we involve the civil society. And here is where I want to focus my final piece of this conversation, of these words. Because in 2019, in Catalonia, we signed the national agreement for the 2030 agenda. And this precisely what it does, it's really setting out a shared vision of how our country can contribute to the SDGs. We formed a coalition that we basically use to share information, to share resources, and also to better understand how we can contribute these best practices to contribute to the SDGs. So let me just say that these put in practice are 920 commitments around 3 main topics, so health, well-being, and education. You will all agree with me that from populism to economic crisis, the democracy has a lot of threats in different fronts. And here I also want to add that the only way in which we can, solve this shared challenge is really if we have the capacity to put the society, the civil society at the center of everything, and if they truly feel they have a skin in the game. So the best antidote to democratic disaffection is, as we said at the beginning, participation and participation policies. This is not new because Aristotle already said this 23 centuries ago, and he said that liberty and equality will be best attained when people feel part of the decisions taken by the government. And here I want to add, when we say by the government, by all levels of government, also by us. So thank you so much for your attention, and thank you for inviting us to be part of this conversation.
Thank you very much, Ms. Victoria Alsina, representing the Catalonia, and with your insights and practice in linking with other member states to learn from each other, and your engagement with the private sector and especially with civil society towards peaceful societies and SDG 16. Let's now move to Madrid, where we have Ms. Almudena Mayo, Councillor of Madrid City Council. And we know that Madrid has presented last week at the World Urban Forum in the session on VLRs, and we would like to know how your VLR is connected with your local planning processes, as well as with the national counterparts that are responsible for SDG reporting. You have the floor, Councillor.
Bueno, pues buenos días en primer lugar. Les mando un caluroso saludo del alcalde de Madrid, que es presidente y copresidente de la Unión de Ciudades Capitales Iberoamericanas. Y para mí es un honor estar aquí representando como secretaria general a 29 ciudades iberoamericanas de las que forman parte de la UCI en este primer día del Foro de Gobiernos Locales y Regiones sobre la Agenda 2030. Quiero saludar en primer lugar a mi querida Emilia, secretaria general de CGLU, y a la señora Maumana, directora general de UNO Hábitat, y a todos los participantes de este panel de esta mañana. Una vez más, este Foro Político de Alto Nivel de Naciones Unidas sobre el Desarrollo Sostenible 2022 nos convoca para analizar el progreso, es tan importante analizar siempre el progreso de los progresos conseguidos y los desafíos pendientes que tenemos con una mirada local. Me parece importantísimo esa reflexión de que hagamos siempre esa mirada local. Más que nunca, y eso coincido con los panelistas anteriores, hay que profundizar sobre la colaboración y las asociaciones entre los distintos niveles de gobierno, local, regional y nacional, pero también fundamental involucrar a todos los actores que forman parte de la vida, ¿no? Al sector privado y sobre todo a la sociedad civil. Permítanme que explique la visión que estamos llevando desde la Unión de Ciudades Capitales Iberoamericanas y cómo estamos abordando este cumplimiento de los objetivos 2030. Estamos en una situación difícil, la verdad que en el que tenemos un gran reto que además se ha acentuado por la crisis post-pandémica. Actualmente el 68% de las metas de la Agenda 2030 no se han cumplido y el 22% de las metas van en retroceso en América Latina y el Caribe. Así lo ha advertido la Comisión Económica para América Latina y el Caribe de Naciones Unidas en marzo de este año, en el marco de su 5ª reunión del Foro de Países de América Latina y Caribe para el Desarrollo Sostenible. Esta tesitura, la verdad, que nos hace pensar y reforzar el papel clave que tienen los gobiernos locales, como el nivel más cercano a los ciudadanos, para concretar cuáles son esos objetivos de desarrollo sostenible que tenemos que cumplir y para organizar una planificación estratégica para cumplirlo. Así lo hemos hecho dentro de la Unión de Ciudades Capitales Iberoamericanas, cuando fijamos la estrategia a seguir para 2021-2024, para destacar que esas agendas locales deben de venir fijadas por la agenda y fijarnos como esa guía de trabajo, el cumplimiento de los ODS, con dos objetivos que son transversales: la innovación y la sostenibilidad como ejes transversales en esas miradas para la creación de ciudades y comunidades sostenibles, cumpliendo el ODS 11. En este foro político de alto nivel 2022, que pone el foco en la revisión de estos 5 objetivos en particular, quisiera detenerme y explicarles un poco cómo estamos afrontándolos nosotros desde la UCI. En primer lugar, explicarles, por ejemplo, que en Santo Domingo estamos llevando a cabo formación especializada a todos los funcionarios públicos de la alcaldía en las áreas por ejemplo, de comercio informal y economía naranja, con un enfoque para la región de Centroamérica, México y Caribe, cumpliendo la ODS 4 de educación. Por otra parte, la promoción de la cultura iberoamericana, que se hace como una misión clara que tenemos desde la UCI. Y en ese sentido, el Distrito Federal de Brasilia se encuentra impulsando un proyecto sobre mujeres destacadas de Iberoamérica en el arte y en la cultura, vinculándolo a la agenda de trabajo como Capital Iberoamericana 2022, cumpliendo lo de ODS 5. En materia de biodiversidad, desde la UCI estamos apoyando a Bogotá con un proyecto que es pionero, que es la creación de un fondo que haga sostenible la conservación de áreas naturales protegidas locales, como el Bosque Metropolitano de Bogotá, cumpliendo lo de ODS 15. Por lo que respecta a la Agenda 2030, quiero destacar 2 iniciativas a modo de ejemplo de intercambio de experiencias entre nuestras ciudades. Por ejemplo, en Sao Paulo hemos organizado el mayo pasado la primera semana de la economía circular para impulsar un modelo innovador y alternativo para el verdadero desarrollo sostenible. Es una iniciativa que continúa profundizando en los objetivos y resultados del proyecto de Sao Paulo 2021 y centrado en una estrategia para evaluar algo que es tan importante, evaluar siempre las ODS. A su vez, también la UCI se encuentra apoyando a la ciudad en la organización de un congreso ODS que tendrá lugar en estos próximos días. El segundo ejemplo de innovación es en la Intendencia de Montevideo. Nos encontramos trabajando en un proyecto centrado en intercambios de experiencias sobre la localización para la elaboración de una guía de implementación de las ODS. Como les decía anteriormente y como se ha dicho anteriormente por los participantes de este panel, contamos con una Agenda 2030, que es una herramienta de planificación básica para la transformación, pero ahora, sin embargo, es el momento también de acelerar y centrar todos nuestros esfuerzos en acelerar el cumplimiento de esa agenda. Por nuestra parte, desde la UCI, estamos trabajando con la Prefectura de Río de Janeiro, en la rumbo a la conferencia Río y más 30 de ciudades, Hemos realizado ya 3 paneles en el de alto nivel y uno de ellos centrado en esa Agenda 2030 del Foro Político de Alto Nivel, con la participación de CGLU, a la que le quiero agradecer de nuevo su participación. Y en este encuentro se plasmaron 3 puntos claves. Las alianzas son estratégicas, son la clave. En segundo lugar, todas las ciudades deben de contar con un informe que reporte y analiza y evalúe el cumplimiento de los objetivos. Y en tercer lugar, que hay que involucrar a todas las personas, como decía anteriormente. Y permíteme compartir con todos ustedes una iniciativa que es sumamente innovadora y que lanzaremos desde la UCI, que son un atlas de grandes ciudades y capitales iberoamericanas. En ese sentido, esta es una herramienta para la gestión del conocimiento que va a permitir visibilizar con datos fiables y actualizados el contexto actual en el que nos encontramos las 29 ciudades miembros en el cumplimiento de estas ODS. Hacia la cumbre de las ODS 2023 de Naciones Unidas tenemos por seguro que vamos a continuar profundizando con todas nuestras ciudades en base a las demandas de nuestras ciudades en beneficio del ámbito iberoamericano. Y en esa carrera hacia el 2030 debemos también, como decía al principio, reforzar los espacios de colaboración en distintos niveles y repensar los modelos y mecanismos e instrumentos con los que contamos desde los organismos y las redes para acelerar esta implementación. Quiero finalizar únicamente ya destacando el Pacto para el Futuro que ha impulsado CGLU y a todos sus miembros para representar ese hito tan importante que es posicionar a las ciudades y a los gobiernos locales como una pieza fundamental para el desarrollo sostenible del futuro. Muchas gracias y estaré encantada siempre de colaborar con todos ustedes.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mayo, also for emphasizing the collaboration between 29 Ibero-American capital cities and how they work together towards the SDGs with focus on culture, women, biodiversity, and also highlighting the Pact for the Future as something to work towards. We're now moving back to Argentina, where we have the mayor of San Justo. And we have heard already from Cordoba about the link between the different levels, spatial levels. But we'd like to hear from you, what is your experience in San Justo related to the SDG implementation? Over to you.
Bueno, buenos días, soy Nicolás Cuesta, soy arquitecto, intendente de San Justo, es provincia de Santa Fe, provincia vecina a Córdoba, una ciudad, lo que nosotros decimos intermedia. Aquí las ciudades intermedias de la Pampa Húmeda son una escala, nosotros tenemos alrededor de 30.000 habitantes, pero mucha área de influencia y mucha producción, no solo de agropecuaria por excelencia. Bueno, primero agradecer y la verdad el aprendizaje que estamos teniendo también y esta participación, tanto a CGLU, a Emilia y en representación de todo el equipo y a Maimuna con toda esta organización que hace para este foro y bueno, en general a ONU Habitat por todo lo que nos conduce en estos lineamientos. Nosotros en San Justo, bueno, particularmente yo asumí justamente en finales del 2015, contemporáneos al surgimiento del Objetivo de Desarrollo Sostenible y posteriormente apenas asumimos el surgimiento de la nueva agenda urbana, que para nosotros los arquitectos y que nos gusta la planificación, también es una hoja de ruta complementaria muy importante para los ODS 11. Y bueno, decidimos desde aquel ingreso, en una reunión de CGLU, me tocó enviado por el gobernador Lifchitz en aquel momento, ir a Barcelona, donde en aquel encuentro de alcaldes elaboramos el documento que los alcaldes del mundo, en representación de CGLU, se envió para ONU Habitat, que se fue en abril justamente del 2016. Así que me tocó incorporarme y aprender todo esto. Sintéticamente, lo pudimos atravesar en nuestro plan de gestión desde el primer día. Y llegamos al 2019, después de 3 años de un trabajo de articular nuestros programas que se iban creando en conjunto con los Objetivos de Desarrollo y Nueva Agenda Urbana, con un libro que, así lo muestro muy de lejos, pero digo, para una ciudad de nuestra escala, tener un libro que tenga programa por programa con una asignación de ODS, que este libro se entregó a toda la comunidad, no hay institución ni empresariado de San Justo que no conozca nuestro plan, y cómo este plan está asignado a uno de ese, a su meta, y bueno, eso nos permitió tener esta hoja de ruta que luego nos permitió en esto del lo multinivel, firmar acuerdos con el gobierno nacional, con los dos gobiernos nacionales. Con el anterior éramos 11 ciudades, recuerdo, en un comienzo, y luego hemos ratificado esta firma con el gobierno nacional anterior. Eso nos parece muy importante. Estas cosas, la unión de ciudades y la gobernanza multinivel permite trascender justamente a las acciones políticas, ir atrás de las acciones técnicas, lo que realmente le importa a nuestras comunidades. Lo hemos logrado. Y en esta consecución de acciones, y gracias a esta presentación, en conjunto con Mercociudad y CGLU, estuvimos en el 2020 en el Foro Urbano Mundial, en Abu Dhabi, que ahí nos encontramos, recuerdo, con Emilia, y hemos expuesto en nombre de la Unión de Ciudades, y ahí firmamos justamente el compromiso para el reporte voluntario, que este año, 2 años después, pandemia por medio, estamos enviando justamente a este gran foro y a la mesa, nuestro reporte voluntario con 5 DS que seleccionamos, y que, bueno, sería como un punto de llegada importante y un punto de partida para nosotros, porque, bueno, el reporte sería nuestro nuevo libro de gestión para seguirlo. Bueno, en ese aspecto, los DS que elegimos, quería destacar, sobre todo por CGLU, por Mercociudad y estas redes de ciudades, que es importante también la interacción entre las ciudades que hoy estamos teniendo y con otros niveles de Estado. Nosotros, el ODS 4, que es uno de los que seleccionamos, lo hacemos en representación de ciudades educadoras, porque San Justo conduce la red de ciudades educadoras de la Argentina, y también somos una de las 4 ciudades de la Argentina que ingresamos a la UNESCO en su programa de Ciudad del Aprendizaje. Y a partir de ahí generamos nuestro DS4. Cuando vamos al 11, como decía, seguimos la nueva agenda urbana. Cuando vamos al 13, lo que presentamos en nuestro plan de acción y mitigación de cambio climático que tenemos con la Red Argentina de Cambio Climático y con el Pacto de Alcaldes. Tratar de tener en unísono los objetivos de desarrollo sostenible con toda esta serie de mecanismos entre ciudades o multinivel para que los proyectos se concreten. Tratando de avanzar rápidamente en el tiempo, Maimuna decía en el Foro Urbano Mundial, y después fue su consigna y que hoy la ratificaba, es la década de la acción. Lo más importante de todo esto es llevarlo a la práctica, que estos programas que tenemos, nosotros los estamos llevando adelante con mucho esfuerzo, y en esa práctica hemos creado la Oficina Municipal de Monitoreo y de Seguimiento de ODS, porque hay que medirse. Nosotros este reporte ya tiene un resultado con un monitoreo y seguimiento de las metas y de los indicadores, que pensamos a partir de este reporte, dentro de cuando hagamos el próximo, nosotros o quien le toque, deberá dar fe y dar cuenta de ese cumplimiento en la acción, porque estamos muy cerca del 2030, y si no actuamos con congruencia y con mucha actitud y compromiso, no se va a lograr. Por ahí, respondiendo a la consigna de este espacio que me tocó, de lo que significa lo multinivel, yo dejar un mensaje que siempre doy, creo que algo hablé también en el Foro Urbano Mundial cuando me tocó. Nosotros venimos trabajando con el gobierno nacional, venimos trabajando con la red, pero mucho se habló hoy, varias ciudades dijeron lo importante de asignar recursos a estas acciones, y esto me parece que el mérito tiene que contar. Que seamos tan pocas las ciudades en la Argentina, si bien América y Argentina está avanzando mucho en los reportes voluntarios, a veces explica que no hay después en los gobiernos nacionales, provinciales, una asignación de programas, un reconocimiento a las ciudades o tanto reconocimiento a las ciudades que siguen estas agendas y que cumplen con estos indicadores y que dan cuenta año a año que vienen cumpliendo y asignan los recursos, poco muchos, que tengan de otros niveles del Estado a esto. A mí me parece que un paso muy importante debe ser ese, que los gobiernos nacionales y provinciales de cada país, más allá de estos compromisos, Argentina estuvimos la semana pasada en Casa Rosada porque hace el reporte acompañando al gobierno, y al gobierno anterior también lo hicimos, y al que venga lo haremos, en estos reportes del gobierno nacional, pero me parece central para apuntar a este punto que me toca, lo multinivel. Yo creo que los organismos internacionales, ONU Habitat, CGLU, hacen su tarea, porque no tienen recursos, lo que tienen es parámetros. Esos parámetros creo que deben llegar a las provincias, a las naciones, para que las ciudades que cumplan y que presenten postura reciban más recursos que aquellas que no tengan una agenda y por ahí se preocupan más por el día a día y no por lo que le interesa al planeta y a la ciudadanía global. Así que bueno, este último mensaje que a veces, digo, no es negativo, pero sí tiene esto de armar agenda para adelante con cómo podemos hacer para que mejore este vínculo entre una ciudad de 30.000 habitantes o de 100.000 o de 1 millón con su gobierno provincial, con su gobierno nacional, pero también con los parámetros que están bien desarrollados y cada vez más en estos encuentros vemos que el mundo y que sobre todo ONU Habitat y la ONU en general lo están siguiendo. Bueno, muchísimas gracias de Argentina. Bueno, sigamos trabajando y agradecer muchísimo este espacio. Van a estar recibiendo nuestro reporte voluntario en este marco de este evento.
Thank you very much, Mayor Cuestas of San Justo, for your emphasis on learning and also the importance of having a roadmap and manuals to support the implementation of the SDGs in your city and a focus on certain particular SDGs. And then finally, that your action and your commitment needs to be also backed up by additional funding from different levels of government to make the multi-level governance work in practice. We're now moving to, we still have 2 speakers. We're running a little bit over time, but we started late, so I think this should be okay. We're now moving to Finland, where we have Mr. Ville Taijama of the city of Espoo. And we know that we had together at the World Urban Forum a very successful event where you presented the SDG sense-making tool, which is a tool to support local governments to kickstart the implementation process with and also you mentioned the SDG 46 network, which is another network of Finnish cities that are engaged in the localization. So can you tell us a little bit more about this and how the VLR that you developed in Espoo has contributed to strengthening the connection and the sharing between cities and the national government? Over to you, Mr. Ville.
Thank you. Mr. Moderator, Raf, and once again, congratulations on the wonderful World Urban Forum for the whole Habitat team. Absolutely tremendous session. And a warm hello from HLPF here from New York. I'm actually in room 8, and there's a session starting very soon. So let's hope I'm able to have the 3 minutes before that. Sense making. I will come back to that, and I will start with the idea of the multi-level, multi-stakeholder approach. I think it's all about dialogue. So moderator was kind enough to coin the VLRs as a starting point and an ending point. I totally agree with that. And in between, it's about engagement and participation. It's a living process of dialogue. And I think that we need to first define why do we make voluntary log reviews. We all agree that now it's the time to scale and catalyze, but why it is so important? And it all comes back to the systemic sustainable development. So with the voluntary local review process, it actually brings 3 important things, and these then connect to the sense making as well. First is the mandate to continue and develop the sustainable development work in our cities and regions. This is perhaps the most important. But the second one is that voluntary local review is not a one-off. It's about long-term ownership. It's a starting point to a journey. And this is also crucially important to understand when we are negotiating with cities. Why should we do a voluntary local review? And the third one is perhaps an outcome of these, and that is that when the 2 previous are done, it's easier to allocate defined resources also for the 2 previous. So it's also about that the voluntary local reviews and the sustainable development cannot be done without the needed resources. About the magic of voluntary local reviews, I think it's in the intersection of this vertical work where we work with national governments and regions as cities, and the horizontal level where cities work within its own community with citizens. Victoria talked about the businesses and other stakeholders. So that's the horizontal level, and it's the intersection where the magic happens. So this is a very important part to focus. And perhaps as a last point, I would say that the reason for the 6 cities in Finland to work together with the sense-making tool, Tampere and City of Tampere and City of Turku just published their VLRs as well, by the way, congratulations to them, is the simple idea that don't go hunting alone. So when you are together, your voice is better heard, you have peer-to-peer learning, and in best case, you are also able to learn from others and share to others. So this is simply the rationale for creating this process, because every city in the end will have unique context-driven indicators. There cannot be a one-size-fits-all, but what can be shared is the process, how we come to those indicators. And if that process is scalable and transparent and easy to use, I think it's easier for us to work together. We are looking forward to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much with your emphasis on long-term ownership and, of course, resources, as many of you have emphasized, but also this sentence that you said, the intersection or the magic happens at the intersection between vertical and horizontal collaboration. I think that's a very interesting way of looking at the need for collaboration. And indeed, process is what can be shared, and then concrete implementation differs in every single city or locality. So finally, now we're now moving to Brazil, where we would like to give the floor to Mr. Alfonso Massot, the Executive Secretary of International Affairs of Sao Paulo State, with a question: how, based on your experience, in what ways the VLRs and the subnational reviews could be better connected to national reporting, and what is the role of local and regional governments to improve this link? So again, going back to this multi-level governance related to sustainable development reporting. You have the floor, Mr. Massot.
Thank you. Greetings to you all, moderator, fellow panelists, and also especially to Emilia Sainz, whom I saw last time about some years ago in New York when we were working on the U20 initiative that we were building. On behalf of the governor of the state of São Paulo, Rodrigo Garcia, who also sends his very warm greetings to you all, I would like to thank Regions 4 for the invitation to participate in this local and regional governments forum on the 2030 agenda on the occasion of the 2022 United Nations High-Level Political Forum. My brief words will present a few aspects on how the state of São Paulo has been consistently contributing to the sustainable development of Brazil. But first, I would like to give you all a quick overview about the state of São Paulo for those who are not acquainted with our reality. São Paulo has a population of 45 million people, a little less than 1/4 of the Brazilian whole population, and our GDP of $600 billion represents 1/3 of the Brazilian GDP. It is the financial, industrial, and commercial center of my country. We are the 3rd largest economy and consumer market in Latin America, behind only Brazil itself and Mexico, as well as the largest world producer of some items like sugarcane, ethanol, and orange juice. The state is committed to the Sustainable Development Goals, to Race to Zero, to Race to Resilience campaigns of the United Nations, and to the Paris Agreement and its principles. The pluriannual plan of the state is also linked to the SDGs, and it shows the importance of each program to the achievement of the goals therein. The state of São Paulo has created in 2018 a commission to implement the SDGs, which is composed by representatives of all the state secretariats, thus contributing to improve multi-level collaboration and good governance. This organism is coordinated by an unit established close to the governor himself. We consider that it is impossible to achieve these goals nationally without the collaboration and the commitment of subnational governments. In this context, local reports are relevant because the policies established in São Paulo have a strong impact across the country for the reasons I've just mentioned. As mentioned also, our government, Rodrigo Garcia, is deeply concerned about the environmental cause. Therefore, in 2020, CETESB, which is the state environmental company, launched the State of São Paulo Environmental Agreement, which brings together over 1,600 companies that are voluntarily willing to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. I've heard the minister from Catalonia, Victoria Alsina, and I have to mention that a few months ago, we received representatives of the Brazilian Catalonia Chamber of Commerce in São Paulo, and the chamber adhered to the São Paulo Environmental Agreement as an international observer. It is also important to highlight that we launched a program which is and will be restoring about 1.5 million hectares of Atlantic forest in the next years. Aligned with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, the State Secretary of International Affairs has developed an internationalization strategy in order to leverage the potential of ESG investments in our state. We are the only state in Brazil to have international offices abroad that contribute to promote our relations across the globe. One in Shanghai, one in Dubai, one in Munich, and the fourth in New York. São Paulo also has signed several MOUs with foreign partners in order to externalize our goals to cooperate even more with other subnational governments, countries, and international organizations. Governor Garcia has a vast administrative experience. He has been the president of São Paulo's Legislative Assembly, as well as the Secretary of State for Social Development, Housing, and for Economic Development, Science, Technology, and Innovation. Social and environmental aspects are considered in all public policies and partnerships, and sustainability and good governance are among the main concerns of the governor. Therefore, we are integrating the SDG agenda with the ESG concepts in the state administration. And this, of course, we hope will reverberate in Brazil. São Paulo is a strong regional reference when it comes to good governance. It is an inspiration to Brazil and perhaps other countries, and I'm sure we will be improving even more in the years to come. Thank you very much. I know we are very short of time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Massot, with the experience of Sao Paulo state, which is indeed a massive economic force. And with that comes a responsibility also to be a leader in sustainable development. Thank you very much for your references to the link to planning and your integration in the full administration of the state. I'd like to close this panel, Emilia, with just one sentence or two. We have heard different experiences of reporting at multiple levels, but also monitoring, planning, implementation, and budgeting. The need for multi-level governance through all these different steps is very critical. And we have done a lot. We have heard a lot of different examples, but more needs to be done in the next 8 years to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 agenda. I'll hand back over to you, Emilia, to close the session. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Raf, for excellent inputs and for the collaboration that we are bringing together to expand this localization movement and to ensure that voluntary local reviews and voluntary subnational reviews contribute also to the transformation of policies and to the achievement of the goals. It is very relevant indeed for us to close this session, congratulating ourselves for this growing participation that we see. If the pandemic had anything good about it, is that we have learned to gather together more and more voices, and I find this a perfect complement to the sessions that we are going to have in New York next week. And I want to leave you only with the picture of the report that we are going to be presenting to the high-level political forum. Is a yearly effort that we drive from UCLG for the Global Task Force with inputs from all the networks and cities around the world about how we are contributing to the achievement of the SDGs through localization. And as you can see, it has a kind of a poetic feel to it this time, because after the pandemic, we feel we need a little bit of hope. And I hope that the voices of local and regional leaders will be bringing a lot of hope and ideas to the table of the high-level political forum this week and next week, and that in the future, as you will see in our statement together, we are more part and parcel of the high-level political forum formal sessions. But allow me to highlight again the huge progress that we have made by being able to consolidate the celebration of this local and regional governments forum with UNDESA, with UN Habitat, and with UNDP. It is an extraordinary achievement. Thank you, everybody. See you soon again. Join us in New York and join the movement. Bye-bye. Thank you, everyone. Bye. Keep well.